Welcome to the Millionaire University podcast. I'm your host, Brien Gearin, with you today. And on this edition of the MU Pod, I'm joined by Libby Gill. She's a speaker, an author, and executive coach who has 3 careers worth of wisdom to share with us today. Libby, thank you and welcome to the show.
My pleasure being here. Thank you, Brien.
Yeah. So, Libby, I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about essentially writing a book, something that you have done incredibly well. And you have a cool little story about how you got your book published with one of the largest publishers in the country or in the world, is my understanding.
Yeah.
But this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs either have done, are doing, or consider doing. Um, but there's so much that goes into it that people don't really know about. And there's so many things like the purpose behind writing a book and becoming an author that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, or especially early stage or aspiring entrepreneurs, don't really think about, myself included. I've learned a lot about authorship just in the past few months as myself and my partner are writing books. So you're the expert here. That's what we're going to tackle today. But real quick, before we hop in there, let's get some context. Share with our listeners for a couple minutes here. Who's Libby Gill? What's your journey been like, and how did you get to where you are today?
Journey was crazy. I've lived all over the place. My dad was a Navy doctor, so I traveled around a lot. I ended up in LA or in Southern California, and family decided they wanted to move back to Florida, where we had been living before. I said, this is it. I'm going to college here. I'm just staying put. This is beautiful. I got a degree in theater, not terribly useful in the world of business, except it did help me learn how to talk and kind of build some confidence. Got a job in entertainment as an assistant in the PR department of what was a small but very prestigious production company. And that was bought by Columbia Pictures and then Coca-Cola and then Sony. And I just kept kind of raising my hand. And in 5 years, I was the vice president of publicity, advertising, and promotion for the Worldwide Television Group. Big learning curve for me, becoming a leader at a relatively young age, but I was sort of I'll raise my hand for this project and then I'll figure it out as I go along. Did that at 2 more studios, head of communications at Turner Broadcasting and then Universal. And after about 16 years, I had trained so many young people to become really great executives, and I loved that. How do you build a career? How do you grow? And so I decided executive coaching was sort of a new field at that point. It was still kind of life coaching and sort of cute. But I really saw where this was going and jumped in, trained. I had studied to be a therapist, so there was a lot of how the brain works and how people tick was built into that. And I started a coaching business and I learned on the job. Unlike you, Brien, I was not a digital marketer. I didn't know a ton about business, never took a business class in college. I've heard you talk about all the classes you never took. So like you, I was like humanities person and I just kind of jumped in and learned on the job. And then within a few years, I was coaching people at Google and Amazon and Honda and all over the world. And then I started speaking. I wrote my first book and was kind of teaching myself how to write a book and learning about that. I've always been a huge reader. But I bought a book off of Amazon on how to write a book proposal, having discovered that if you're writing nonfiction, you don't write the book, you write a proposal, which I assume you and your partner are doing unless you're going the self-publishing route, which is different.
Mm-hmm. So, Libby, starting at square one, if I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, I'm an early stage entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur of any way, shape, or form, or I just want to write a book for crying out loud. What is square number one? I know you bought a book off Amazon. It sounded like writing you said the proposal for your book. Can you walk us through the steps or your framework for going from an idea to actual concept to let's all the way to selling it to a publisher or self-publishing and all the different options that go with it?
Yeah, sure. I knew I was leaving the corporate world and wanted to teach myself how to write a good nonfiction book. Now, I'd always been a professional writer because I was a communications person. I wrote speeches and copy and all that kind of stuff. So it was a little easier for me. Some people are so daunted by this whole task. It's not easy, but there's plenty of help out there. So they should just put that in your back pocket. Know that people will edit you and help you. So the first thing is to really think about why am I doing this? If you, as you said, if you just want to write a book, great, write one, knock yourself out, do it for fun, share it with family, get it out of your system, or keep writing for fun. But if you were a business person, because I wanted to write a novel way back then, but I knew that didn't really make any sense. I would have to write the whole thing. It would not affect my business. It wasn't going to get me any keynote speeches. So I had to write something that made sense in my business. And I wrote first about sort of the personal journey of self-healing and how you build that kind of confidence and courage to go down the path you want to go down. It was called Traveling Hopefully. And it was actually my second book. My first one was a parenting book. That was I'm going to train myself how to do this. And I was in entertainment. There were a lot of women who were the primary wage earners of the family, and a lot of guys, many of whom were musicians or actors or artists who were home with the kids. And I knew that trend well. And I thought, well, this is an interesting topic. Let me write about this. And no one had ever written on that topic before, but the trend was growing. So I thought that's a good starter book. And I went out and interviewed. I decided that's going to be my topic. I don't know where it will go, but I'll learn a lot in the process. And I bought this book on how to write a book proposal because I knew I wanted it to go to a traditional publisher. If you're going to self-publish, you don't have to write a proposal. You can just get in and start writing your book. But the proposal, and there's a pretty standard form. You write about what the concept is in a synopsis. You write about the author. Why are you the expert to tell this story, to write this book? You have a chapter summaries of like 10 or 12 chapters. What is each chapter about? You write a marketing plan, which is probably the most critical thing because a traditional publisher wants you to be able to sell your book. So if you're talking to 5,000 or 10,000 people a day or a week or whatever your audience number is, Brien, they want to know those numbers with the assumption that you're going to be out there plugging your book because whether you're traditional or self-published, that is critical. So I really spent about a year interviewing people and talking to these sort of non-traditional couples. I wrote the proposal, which was about 60 pages. You've got to write a sample chapter, sometimes two, plus all these other pieces. I put it all together and I needed an agent. Didn't have an agent, didn't know anyone. Started asking people and just turns out I had an entertainment attorney that I knew. And he said, well, try this guy. And finally, someone responded, read the proposal, decided he was going to take me on and market that book. And I actually had multiple offers and a good advance, which in traditional publishing, you can get an advance, which is an advance against your royalties. You have to then out-earn that advance before you start making royalties per book sold. Out-earning an advance is a big hallelujah day. When you do that, it's really hard. And people, I think a lot of people aren't aware that there are about 3 million books published a year. When you include all the self-published books, it's a huge number. So getting a book sold to a traditional publisher and then getting it marketed, discovered by readers is really a process. So you've got to be invested in it. It's a lot of work, as you've already, I'm sure, discovered.
Yeah. So my question is going to bounce all over the place, but my first one that's popping off the top of my head is why did you want to publish with I guess a big name or one of the top publishing companies out there as opposed to self-publishing?
At that point, I wasn't quite sure what my field was. I knew I was going to become an entrepreneur. I wanted my own business. I knew it was in some field of professional development, but I was so new at it. And the field itself was relatively new. I mean, coaching was a new idea 30 years ago. And so I thought I need the help. I need to learn how this business works. And also, I knew the publisher takes care of the distribution. They get your book in stores. They get your book out there. And they help a little bit with the marketing. And the first couple of books I was sent on tour. So the publisher picked that up. It's really hard to, unless you're a 1%, kind of way top of the scale author, you don't get sent on a lot of book tours now. You do a lot of that yourself. And you do a lot of it electronically through podcasts and other ways. And so then I wrote a second book, and this was about this journey of kind of self-healing and how do I find my path and all of that. It was just what I had gone through. And the first book I sold to Penguin, big publisher. The second one I sold to St. Martin's. and got a 6-figure advance. I mean, it was pretty heady. Those things don't happen a whole lot anymore. And made, number one on Amazon. I was on the Today Show. I was on CNN a bunch of times. I did all the local talk shows around the country, got a lot of press for that. And then a speaker bureau knew about that from my then agent, picked me up and signed me exclusively. And I thought, okay, being exclusive to a bureau is not necessarily a good thing. You want as many people working for you as possible. But again, I was a newbie and I thought, I got to dive in and learn. And it seems like if I am an exclusive speaker for this agency, this bureau, they'll teach and train me and be more invested in me. And I learned a lot. And what I learned pretty quickly is people were, they were interested in the personal journey, but they were really interested in the fact that I had worked at Sony, Universal, Turner Broadcasting, had all these marketing and communication and brand skills. And so that's what I began to focus on. And then I continued to write. And during the first big recession, I thought, I'm never going to sell a book to a publisher. The business was really depressed. And I was prepared to self-publish. And I'd gotten pretty used to traditional publishing. I've written 7 books now, and I really kind of liked that model. But I was prepared to self-publish, and I went to one of the author conferences, and they're big book selling conferences around the world, BEA. And it just happened to be in LA where I was living. And so I was walking around with a friend, and she introduced me to a publisher who said, "What are you working on?" And, note to everybody, if you want to have those conversations, be ready. I really am a big believer in rehearse these important conversations, because either the opportunity will arise or you will make it happen. And when this fella said, "What are you working on?" I said, "I'm working on a book called You Unstuck. I'm an executive coach. I find that some clients are ready to roll. They just skyrocket, and others stay mired in this, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, nobody will believe," that kind of negative self-sabotage. And I really codified what I was doing. By then, I'd been executive coaching for quite a while, about a decade. And so it was really my coaching Bible. And that book continues to really sell well today. You Unstuck was really, my method was, this is for all my entrepreneurs and also corporate people, was clarify, simplify, execute. Whatever you're doing, entrepreneurs, clarify the vision. Where are you going? And I'm sure you can do that right now with your podcast and your book and where you and your partner are going in terms of growth. And there are all ways you can do this. You can make it qualitative. I want a lifestyle business where I can do, live this sort of life, or I want to make X amount of dollars, or I want to impact X number of people. Clarify that vision. Simplify your path to getting there. Some people, and I think I was one of those, it's like, give me the slowest, longest route, and that is the line I'm taking. So by this point, it was like, how do you get there? How do you bring in the right experts? How do you get rid of the wrong people? Not necessarily bad people, but people that are slowing you down or taking you on the wrong path. It's like, that's not what I want to do. I'm sticking to my guns. And then finally, you got to execute. So if you clarify the vision, simplify the pathway, and execute the plan, you will get there one way or another. Got to be realistic. Got to be on the earth plane. Can't help you. It's like, I'm not going to be an astronaut or a professional ballerina at this stage of my life. So you've got to be thoughtful. But I really think, given some sort of pragmatism combined with this level of passion, like, I'm really going to work hard to do this, you can build it. And pretty soon I kept writing books and selling them. And they were really on topics that I cared about, because it takes a while, as I'm sure you've discovered, to really figure out what is my message. And that's kind of the easy part, because that's what you do. Then what is my framework? How do I take what I'm doing? And I really believe you write your way to the next level of your business. Like, I got to figure all this out so other people can follow this pathway. And in my book, You Unstuck, I just I started what I call the accountability club when I launched it. And it was this weekly coaching group. And it was, just show up. And I said in the book, if you follow this pathway and you don't move to the next level, call me and I will coach you personally. And I did. I only had one person call me. I knew I wouldn't get a lot of calls, because either people never follow through, which is really sad, or they followed through and found some success. But I had one person who was in a really unique situation with a disabled daughter and, all kinds of financial hardships. And she's one of my best friends today. I just kind of took her on as, let's figure this out. And she went from being an attorney to being an energy coach. She's a real healer and has found a whole open world. And so there's a lot of success stories in the book, and a lot of here are the things you'll have to commit to if you're going to do this. And so I kept as I refined my message and got more sophisticated in my business, because when I started out, it was learn on the job. I trained, I took all kinds of courses, all of that, to start coaching other people. And I'd done it in the corporate world for more than a decade. But then I really clarified. My books got deeper. I wrote one book about branding called Capture the Mind Share. I wrote another book about leadership and it's about the science of hopefulness called Hope Theory, which comes from medicine and positive psychology, which I was a student of. And it's really about having a vision of the future, like I said, that is really fueled by passion. You care enough to work hard and make it happen, but it's grounded in practicality. It's realistic, and you can get there a step at a time. And I'm a big one on sequencing. Entrepreneurs start a business and they think, and I did this, it's like, I got to do 50 things a day. And pretty soon you're either exhausted or ineffective or both. And then you find out, I got to hone and figure out what is most important when. And I put so many people on an annual worksheet where you figure out what's the big thing of the year. Maybe for you, it's writing the book. How am I going to measure success? You'll either do it or you won't. Doesn't mean it's going to be a bestseller. That's outside your control. But writing it, getting it out into the world, that is within your control. You set the time frame. But I find most people, you can't really accomplish anything big in less than a year to 18 months. So I started setting this one big goal and getting people, and then breaking it down into quarters. So you hold yourself accountable, and then breaking that down into months. And that's how I wrote my first book. And that's how I continue to write it, is to have a calendar, have a schedule. If I've got 12 chapters, what does that mean? Is it 3 chapters a month? Is it 1 a month? And you figure out. And for everybody, it's different. If you're taking care of aging parents and small children, you're not going to crank out a book in 3 months. People tell you can. I argue with that. That write a book in 99 days. Yeah, you can. How good will the quality be? How good will the editing be? The information? I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of those. But certainly you can write a quality book and self-publish it. You just take the same steps. You hire an editor. You do all of those things.
So let's talk about purposes behind writing a book.
Yeah.
I think there's lots of different motivations and lots of different purposes, but I think if you don't go into writing a book with a purpose or with a I don't want to say a correct purpose, because there's many different ways you can go.
Mhm.
But what do you say about the different purposes you can have to write a book, and are there any that we're not considering, or that maybe the general population might think this is why you write a book, but maybe that's not quite right?
I think a lot of people think they want to write a book. You can ask a room full of people who believes they've got a story to tell. Every hand's going to go up. Everybody does have a story to tell. Not all of them are marketable. But you could certainly write a story to share with friends and family. And I've seen people do that, or write a memoir that's for their own healing or their own journey. There are all those reasons to write a book. If you are building a business, and I'm pretty practical, and I thought, okay, I've got to write. I got my beginner book out of the way, and that got me, I got a lot of attention for that. I got a ton of pushback for that book too, because people felt I got a lot of that. Women should be home raising kids and all that kind of stuff. And it, made good radio argument talk. So it was a lot of fun. Controversy is good. You polarizing is good. You don't want to be in that bland middle spot. You either want people to love your idea or not be on board and be willing to voice that. That gives you a lot of meat to talk about. So it was not a bad thing. So I wrote mine for business. I wanted to launch this coaching business, and I thought I didn't know, honestly, if I was going to be more of a motivational speaker or more on the business side. And I have a very strange family backstory, suicide, alcoholism, all of this in my family story. And I wrote about that healing path. And that book I've had so many people say, that sat on my bedside table for years and that kind of thing. But once I got into the executive coaching and the speaking world, I thought I'm going to go on a very clear business path. And that's when I wrote You Unstuck. I wrote about coaching. I wrote about leadership. And it was to build credibility, to define a framework that others could follow, to get me hired as a speaker. And boy, did it do that. If you go into it thinking I'm going to make a lot of money, well, good luck, because the hours you put in, not a lot of us get that money back. I will say I've made a good living as an author, but it's always been in conjunction with being a speaker and a coach. So I've made advances. I've made royalties. I've done well with that. But, I'm knocking wood. I was fortunate, and I'm a pretty good writer, so that helped. But you can write a book to let people know this is what I do and this is how I do it as a lead generator. It's a sales tool. I think a book is the best thing for that, because somehow you enter this sort of magic authors club. The doors do open. You can get on media. You get booked on shows, on radio, on podcasts. You build this visibility by having more that you can share with others and more that is said about you, which is publicity. That's third-party endorsement. It's not you saying, it's other people through their reviews and their endorsements. So you definitely begin to build authority in your field, credibility, because people say, hey, this Brien guy, he knows what he's talking about, because I did those three things. And boy, did that skyrocket my business. And then visibility as more and more people hear about you. And I ended up speaking. I've spoken in the Gulf region. I've spoken in Kuwait. I've spoken in South America, throughout the Caribbean, all through Canada, across the US. I think I'm up to like 48 states at this point. And just because people hear about you, read about you, or they see something online, that does a huge amount to building that profile and brand. And it gives you material. I pull things from all my books now. If I want to, I really should put up a LinkedIn piece. So I'll just pull that quiz or that article or that piece. You've got social media forever. When you pull out sound bites, you pull out topics. And you had said today, well, what do you want to talk about? It's like, I've done a lot at this stage of my career and my life, but I've started to speak at, I closed my coaching business a year ago when I sold my first novel, which was like starting all over as an author. And now I speak at writing conferences, which now it's, I'm working for fun at this stage, which, to me was always the goal, because I couldn't write a novel when I was starting my business. It wouldn't have done a thing in terms of credibility or brand building. That would have been, and who knows if it would ever sell. And if I was ready to write it, it's actually harder than writing nonfiction, because at least nonfiction, you've got a premise, you've got interviews, you've got research, you've got data, you've got all of that, you've got your process. And getting it out there, when you see your book on a shelf, and not everybody needs an actual physical book. You certainly don't need that anymore. You can go to Kindle, you can go the self-publishing route as well. And you still get found. People see you. And it's a great feeling when you see that out there, or somebody says, hey, I've read that book. I love that book. So it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. So for someone who's just starting out, writing their book, or maybe they're starting to put chapters together, but they're wondering about publishing. You mentioned self-publishing.
Yeah.
Do you know much about self-publishing, or is that for the majority, is that a better route to go as opposed to finding a publisher, I guess?
I have guided coaching clients over the years through both processes. Self-publishing, there are definitely benefits to each. Traditional publishing, it used to give you a little more cachet, a little more credibility, and the chances of getting reviews were higher. That's kind of gone away as self-publishing has become a much better, not just business, but it's become more refined. You can't really put out a little pamphlet and call it a book anymore. You've got to do the writing. You've got to do the editing. You've got to do the polishing. The advantages are you own the book. I have to get certain permissions from my publisher if I want to use it for different things. And they own, for example, my audio rights. So, that comes under them. Self-publishing, you do whatever you want. You can I have one client who pulled out a chapter at a time and released them one at a time and then sold the entire book.
Hmm.
That's a great way to do it. People will teach workshops based on it and give away pieces of their book in workshop style. It's a lot faster. Traditional publishing can take 18 months to a year from the time they buy it, they read it, they edit it, and then they get it into their sales cycle, which is a predetermined kind of cycle. So if you want to write something and get it out, self-publishing is a better route. You don't get in advance, you're paying yourself basically. You do get all the royalties and you get all the control. You get to the cover you want, you get to edit it the way you want, you get everything the way you want it to be. So for many people, it is in fact a better route in the business world, just because it's efficient, it's quick, and you control all the pieces of it.
Does it become, let's say you own maybe a small seven-figure business, or, a mid six figures, whatever, you're a small business. Is it advisable to write a book just to have something to point to and say, "Oh, hey, I wrote the book on this," or, "We solve this problem for this type of client." When you're in your sales process, when you're prospecting, when people ask you a question, you say, "Oh, we wrote that in our book here. Here, hey, let me send you a free copy." Is it more of an asset for a smaller business? And this would be purely for the purpose of a small business owner. Is it something you recommend that a business owner, or even a B2B business owner, that they just have this as an
Yeah,
asset in their
absolutely.
business?
Yeah, I do. It's the best business card you can possibly have. Assume you're prospecting, and there are three people up for that job or project or whatever, and you're the one that meets with this client and says exactly what you said. Here, this is exactly what we talk about. This is what we're experts in. Here, let me give you a copy of my book, and you can see some of our thoughts in this book. Absolutely. Versus somebody who's going to talk it through and send them a proposal. You've done it. It's proof of concept. You've got it. You've written it. It's pretty solid. It's very persuasive when you have that. Now you can't shortchange it. It's got to be well written. Hire an editor if you're not a writer. Hire a ghostwriter if you're not a writer. There are all kinds of services out there, and you can do that and get the help that you need. And then you polish it and you make sure it's a good product. Ask to look at the paper samples if somebody's printing it up for you. Ask them to send you several of their published books so you can see what you think. Is it legitimate? I have a friend who did a hardback small book, beautiful hardback book. She had some money. She put a lot of money into that book, but it became sort of her manifesto. And to her, it was well worth it.
Wow. Okay.
You don't have to
So
do that. A trade paperback book, which mass paperback are the little ones you see at the grocery store. A trade paperback is this size book. This size book, it's considered completely credible and very normal in today's world of books. Also, note to authors or aspiring, it's a lot easier to ship or carry around a stack of trade paperbacks than it is a stack of hardbacks. I've done both. So nothing
yeah.
against that, and you keep your costs down.
Okay, so it's not a bad idea to have a little paperback book. What types of things? I guess this is totally business dependent, but what types of things should an expert or a business owner write about? Are there certain pain points? Like, I guess I'm asking, is a good framework for, let's say, a small business owner who wants to be write a book, author a book? Should you make that book about, like, the top 7 pain points you encounter? Obviously, that's not the title of your book,
Yeah.
but I'm just thinking of ways that somebody who's in a business wants to write a book to have this asset in their business. What do they write about?
Well, first, let me give you the very easiest way to get started, and that's write a short ebook and put it on your website as a lead generator. I wrote a book about the science of hopefulness and how it applies to business. It's a 35-page ebook, and I had studied a ton. I had 2 publishers approach me just because they saw it on my website and asked me to write the book on that topic. So that you can get started with, and that's an easier way to break in. What you want to write about is the thing that people constantly ask you. There are a lot of books on the same topics. I mean, think about it. You go to your bookstore, there are always tons of diet books and self-help books. There are always lots of leadership and business books. What your title is really important, and your secret sauce is important. What makes you different? What makes your spin on the topic different? And that's when I started looking at hope, because I had talked about hope as kind of what saved my life as a child, as a young adult. I was always looking at, how do I make tomorrow better? How do I instill that belief that I can get through this, whatever it is? And that was hope for years. And I love this quote: to travel hopefully is a better thing than to arrive, which is a Robert Louis Stevenson quote. And I just borrowed it from my book, Traveling Hopefully. And then I encountered this science and data behind hope, and that became my spin on leadership. And the speaking world was not quite ready for that. So, what I am an expert in is navigating change, leading through change, challenge, and chaos, which I found during COVID, huge topic. Post COVID, still a huge topic. And then I would introduce the idea of why hopefulness and the science of hope are so important to you and your business, your customers. You're instilling that sense of, I've got you. With this book, with my training, with my coaching, with my products, I've got your back. And it's that ability. And, the best salespeople just do that naturally. They've got that gene or that DNA. Mm-hmm. So you think about, of all the digital marketing, of all the online ad people, or whatever, your core specialties are in the world, why am I a little different? Is it because I'm a dad to 4 kids and I've got to be super efficient and figure out how to do this while I'm juggling all these other things? Yeah. Is it because I've got a background in this area? Is it, what is it? The guy who is the CEO for WD-40, the can of you fix, he is a specialist in employee engagement and writes books with a friend of mine who happens to be his co-writer about how do you keep your employees satisfied. And he's become an expert in that, even though he's like, that oil product. So you find what your secret sauce is. And for some people, it's really hard because you think, oh, I'm not that special, and get over that really fast. Just survey your clients. Talk to people. What do I do best for you? And how do I bring it in a way that makes you want to come back? What is it about me? People said to me for years, because I always surveyed clients pre and post, was like, you give me the feeling I can do anything. You have such a belief in my ability. It's beyond what I believe. And then you give me the resources and the plan of attack. And to me, that came under the hope and tools. And my whole book, You Unstuck, here's the hope and tools. Here's what you've got to keep top of mind. And here's the best resource for this challenge. Another tip for your aspiring and your authors is find a book that you like the layout, that you like the structure. I've had a lot of people say, oh, I like how you did You Unstuck. You've got 3 questions at the end. You've got these great quotes throughout it. You find it doesn't matter what it could be, a gardening book, doesn't matter what it is. You find a book and say, hey, I like this 10 chapter perspective that says the 7 pain points, but in, more interesting language. Because what you don't want to do is do what everybody else does. And I always call it with my clients, my cliche meter is very high. So if you tell me I'm all about passion and purpose, I will tell you, 10 million other people are too. So let's come up with some golden language that's unique to you. And Brien, you probably say stuff all the time that you think, oh, that's just how I put it. That's where the magic is. The way you say it that nobody else does. The things you tell your clients, the way you get them comfortable or you do it for them, that's what they want to hear, is how you put that and how you talk to people. So people can't undersell who they are. I mean, it's just like I tell people, if you've got a backstory, you share that. That's what motivated you to do whatever you did. I don't know for you if it was the lifestyle freedom. I want to work at home. I want to be free. I want to build an income. I want to support the family, but have some of that flexibility in there, which is so critical for people. So what is your secret sauce? You tell me.
Yeah, no, well, for the marketing side, that's why I built the business, because I always tell people I was from the island of misfit toys. Like I didn't fit in as an employee. I was a halfway decent employee at half of the places I worked in, and I was terrible everywhere else because I just wasn't happy. I didn't like it. So that was a big part of why I got into entrepreneurship, and that's a part of my secret sauce is I'm just uniquely me. Yeah. And there's so many different things that, like in my emails and my writing, people say, oh, you write like you talk. And I'm like, That's because my brain talks like I write. I write like my brain's telling me to. That's just how it works. So
Yeah,
yeah, I totally get that. How it's just whatever makes you you and whatever makes you the expert in what you do, that's
yeah,
where you need to live. And I think for a long time, especially when I first started as an entrepreneur and I was trying to put out content online and, trying to write and trying to get better at it for so long, I was stuck in this mindset of, oh, I need to be what I think someone else needs me to be,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I wasn't being me.
yeah,
And of course, you crickets, right? Like you get
yeah,
nothing. But then the minute I started being like, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to be me. I'm going to put it out there and not worry about it.
yeah.
That's when things started changing so many years ago.
Yeah,
So
you're the guy in
it's
the
the same thing with
t-shirt.
writing a book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got the
I'm
backwards
backwards hat guy. I've
baseball
had I've
cap,
had people be like, oh, that's not very professional. I'm like, it's me though. I'm on a
dude.
camera here. I wear my red shirt. Like that's what
It's
I
what I
do. That's what I
do.
am.
It's who I
Yeah.
am. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's
Exactly.
hard at first when you think you've got to sort of model after someone. What I will say for those writing a book, writing like you talk is great and being who you are. It doesn't mean you don't need a professional editor to say, yeah,
Right.
you've misspelled this word 30 times. Let's like get your and your
Yeah.
together. Yeah. So you
I
want to
think
do
you
that because for
yeah.
one reason, it snags the reader's eye if they're saying, oh, yeah, this is a little cringy for me. Yeah, so you
Yeah.
do that, but you can talk exactly like you are. You can write gotta, Gotta, or oughta, or however
Mhm.
you want to do it.
Right.
But that is the essence of someone who is really like I'm comfortable. I tell people, my age. I've had 3 careers. I'm working for fun now. I get to do that,
Yeah.
and you should be thinking towards that too, because there's going to come a point where you're going to say, I got enough money in the bank. Now my time is really important. My kids,
Mhm.
I've got adult kids. I like to spend time visiting them. You want to
Right.
I really believe that people work in this systematic way and just improve incrementally, they're going to get where they want to go. They're going to get that money in the bank. One thing I've told so many women, because statistically they're worse at this, is getting a financial base under them. Don't overspend, and authors tend to overmarket because we're so emotional about our books. I mean, we spend when we're not getting the money back. So we have to put a rein in on some of that. But we've got to really, think about your finances. That's not something I was great at. I was pretty good at making money in my corporate days, and then later when I sort of figured out business. But you need advisors. You need your own sort of board of advisors around you. You're the CEO, but you need wherever your weaknesses are. I mean, mine were, I need a finance person. I need a technology person. I need a coach. I've got a fitness person who's an expert in women over 60. I mean, I want those people in my life. You just never need, that never stops. I'm sure as good as you are at what you do, you've got advisors.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've had a business coach for going on 2 years, and he's actually be moving towards partnership in my business. So there's
Wow.
so much more that comes with advisorship. But
Yeah.
yeah, Libby, this has been so much awesome information. I want to make sure we're respecting your time and getting you out to go probably write another book, I'm guessing. But
I'm working on the second one. Yep.
okay, awesome. Well, so before we leave, I want to make sure if you have a chance to let us know your book or your most recent book or your books that are out there. But also, if any of our listeners want to get in contact with you, or if they want to check out your books, what is the best way to do all the above?
You could just go to libbygill.com, LIBBYGILL.com. I've also got libbygillbooks.com for my novel that just came out last year. And if you want to write me, I have all kinds of free resources. If somebody says, hey, do you have a list of tools for authors? Yeah, I do. So just write me at libby@libbygill.com. I'm like the easiest person in the world to find. And it sometimes takes a little while if I'm traveling, but I answer all my emails. And I love hearing what people are interested in.
Awesome. Well, that's easy peasy. Well, Libby, thank you so much for joining me. You brought a lot of value and knowledge to the table here, and I'm sure our listeners out there who were excited about writing a book might be even more so now. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right.